Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that, and that's quite a story. And now, um, that's what it looked like in the air, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, what it looked like from the ground. I want to also thank Laura for asking me to address you all this evening, and Kathy Kiley, which got me down here, and Brian Brooks, who will return me. And so it's been quite a coordinated effort, and for all of that, I certainly express my appreciation. For the opportunity to speak at this occasion where we honor our great spirit and democracy and what it has meant to those who have defended it. Those still with us and those not, their families, each and every one. Today I have the honor of telling the rest of Director Wallingford's story. It's a story of never being forgotten, being an American at war, of having faith in our country and women and our nation. So we listen to how this faith and how this story played out. You have heard from those rescuing, and now you will hear from those being rescued. It was the winter of 1972. Christmas was approaching yet again. I had been a prisoner of war in North Vietnam prison camps almost 6 years, and at this time I was living in a cell of about 30 in the Hanoi Hilton in the center of Hanoi, Vietnam. Almost all of the POWs had been moved out to where we didn't know, leaving only our cell. This was a newly formed cell of individuals from several of the large cells that comprised the group that had been moved away. Many of the past discussions we had in our old cells were pretty well worn out, but now we proceeded to become acquainted with our new cellmates, new blood, new arguments, new logic, revitalized old topics of vital importance in the lives of those of us tired of being prisoners of war. Now, one of the discussions that persisted between the pessimists, always pessimists, and the optimists, likewise, always optimists, was the likelihood or lack thereof whether our country would demand our release during the peace talks, which had dragged on, as I mentioned, for 2 years or so. We were constantly told by the communist North Vietnamese that our country was going to abandon us and we would be tried as war criminals in Vietnam, and many of us would be executed. I was a reconnaissance pilot. I was a spy. I would be executed. Many of the French captured at Dien Bien Phu and then marched to Hanoi and imprisoned in the same prison that we were in were abandoned by France. Having been defeated and driven out of Vietnam, the French had little recourse to recover their prisoners of war. There were 15,000 French soldiers flown into Dien Bien Phu, 5,000 killed, 10 injured and marched out of Dien Bien Phu, 5,000 made it home. After having been defeated and driven out of Vietnam, the French had little recourse to recover their prisoners of war. So, the logical argument by the pessimists was that we were just a big liability to our country and were just out of luck. Our country would most likely not pay the exorbitant ransom demanded by our captors, nor the return in dollars, material, political recognition, and actions demanded by the North Vietnamese. Nor would we as a nation commit to a loss of lives and aircraft that would wreak enough havoc on North Vietnam to convince them to release us. That story which we just heard. In fact, Hanoi, as Wayne mentioned, was more heavily defended than was Moscow, and with the same radar aimed surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft artillery, some of that even manned by the Soviets. Now the optimistic view. The optimistic view, which I favored even though I myself thought to be more of a logical realist, turned out to be somebody that just wasn't brave enough to stand up for what they really believed. Our countrymen and women would not let us be forgotten. We were, after all, American. Kind of a weak argument, actually, think about it, and drawn more on faith than logic. But after 5 years, faith was not a stranger to me anymore. Well, the ground beneath us quivered like a bowl of jiggled jello. Perhaps I thought a small earthquake in the mountains somewhere near the valley that Hanoi was in, and that was just all mud. There were some aftershocks, and so we thought maybe there might be some bombing, but the shakes lasted too long for that, and besides, our bomber guys, they didn't waste around. They came in, they bombed, and they boogied out. So, what was this? And besides, there was a bombing halt, which Wayne had mentioned, to encourage the North Vietnamese back to the negotiating table. Then we heard it. Thunder. Thunder from absolutely cloud-free skies. We looked at each other. We looked at each other kind of almost furtively. President Nixon had sent our B-52s to come get us. The B-52s of carpet bombing and massive destruction fame, and we cheered loudly. Now the guards, they did not like that, but they knew not yet what was coming. Over the ensuing days and nights, terror absolute terror rained from the sky. We had large barred open windows from which we could see about 30% of the sky. And when the Buffs came to town, Hanoi erupted like a volcano. The sky was just full of explosions, surface-to-air missiles, high-altitude anti-aircraft shells exploding, tracers of all kinds. Some just shot up unaimed into the air, hoping that an aircraft would just come along and run into it. And they did once in a while. We called them a silver bullet. There were huge explosions on the ground as the bombs fell and fell. The surface-to-air missiles missed their targets and screamed back into Hanoi, exploding and destroying the city that they were supposed to be protecting. When our first anti-radar missiles swished in, usually delivered by our F-105s, and hit the radar sites around the prison because they parked them there knowing that not any respecting B-52 crew would even come close to dropping bombs near the Hanoi Hilton. We knew that. When the air raid sirens blew, lights went out, guards fled for their concrete manholes, and we climbed into the windows. Now, sometimes on each other's back. These were very tall windows. The air raid sirens blew, the lights went out, jumped on each other's backs. But then they were the Navy Air Force A4 intruders, A6 intruders. They would strike day, night, all weather. Light bombers. They could streak in under the radar, unseen by the watch, and unheard until gone. To our delight, they did this with what I term regular, random strikes. Think about that. Random irregularity. Just every now and again, but absolutely. Sometimes it was a very low pass over the prison just to let us know that, hey, we're still up here, guys. We're not going anywhere. When the Buffs were gone, Hanoi, still dark, settled into a massive, glowing halo. It's like it was like that. From all directions we could see, with some bombs still exploding occasionally, the all clear siren would blow. The lights would still come on, but seemingly randomly, and more respectfully now that they had seen the full fury of the evil. But wait, suddenly the roar of the intruder, bombs exploding, more flashes, fire, guards running for their manholes, sirens blaring, lights going out, but nothing. In one of these episodes, our guards fled our open cell door. It's just standing there, swinging open. We were smart enough to not try to charge out of there, but still thought it was quite interesting. But nothing happened. The intruder had actually struck, bombed, and gone before they even got to the siren button. Was it clear? Or might there be another flight coming? But these intruders were known to stack up. One would come charging through, the rest of them would just hang out, see? Then they turn the lights on and here they come again. Oh, was it clear, or might there be another flight of intruders coming? Sometimes they would blow the all clear, turn on the lights, and here they'd come. The guards became really bleary-eyed, sleep-deprived, and they were scared. They were scared. When you run off and just leave a iron door with 30 prisoners of war that have been there for 6 years just swinging, you're scared. Hanoi's radar was destroyed. Their guns and missiles were being fired aimlessly. They were running out of SAMs, anti-aircraft shells, and they could not get resupplied. Our B-52 boys had not forgotten the China-Vietnam border, nor had they forgotten the Haiphong Bay. And so when there were no worthwhile targets that remained in Hanoi and the surrounding area, and from what we could see, it was just rubble. Kissinger, President Nixon's Secretary of State, announced that he would, in fact, be at the peace talks the next day. And would you believe the always tardy and reluctant peace delegation from Fort North Vietnam was there, and they were ready to talk in 24 hours. So early in 1973, my numbers miss those just a little bit. 660 Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force POWs released from prisons in North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and Laos. We were never forgotten. But there are almost 1,600 still missing. We cannot help but be mindful of all those families who throughout our conflicts hoped, prayed, sacrificed, and suffered the anguish of waiting. We must not shrink our duty to teach the lessons of service to country, to others, to our youth, to each other, to our warriors. More than ever today, we should remind our nation our democracy is great because of those who have served it, those who are still missing in action, and who have given their all. It is said in a quote, and it is not my quote, but I really like it and I will pass it on. Take for granted your warriors, forget them, and fail to care for them and their families, and fail to provide them faith in their countrymen and women, and you will have no warriors, and you will have no freedoms. So as I close, I want to God bless this gathering and say God bless America. Thank you very much.